Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It is August 31st, a day before Labor Day, as we are recruiting this. And Palmer, Onward to Victory is back. It's our third season of doing this. We're on a whole new channel, still under the Giant Kill Award mark, but on a whole new channel here to provide you everything George Mason basketball related. Palmer, we are really not that far off from the season starting. We're about 2 months out. We don't have a non-con schedule yet. We'll get to that shortly, but first, let's talk about the biggest win for the Patriots this offseason after the best season in well over a decade last year, Palmer. Tony Skinn in this new era of college basketball. It feels like you never know when a coach may leave. But even with the Maryland job opening late, Tony Skinn does return for his third season as George Mason basketball coach.
Yeah, that was a big one. We were kind of worried, but we were pretty confident that he would not get fixed for it. We thought it was gonna be Buzz Williams pretty much the entire time, and then there was like 5 minutes where it was like, oh, whoa, 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 but then it went back to okay, it's Buzz Williams again.
Yeah, there was
I do,
about I remember that day
yeah,
very well. There was about 20 minutes on the day that Williams was hired where everyone was like, well, wait a minute. It was like, well, wait a minute. It might not be Buzz. It might be someone else. And there was like, no, wait, Buzz is
yeah,
here. He's here.
yeah.
And then that was it. Tony Skinn also signed a new extension this year, making him, I believe, the highest paid men's basketball coach in Mason's history. His starting salary for this season now takes him to $1.7 million this season, with a rolling $100,000 increase for every contract year leading into, I believe, the 29-30 season, which would, if he would stay that whole contract without another boost or an extension, that would take him over $2 million. It is, does that feel like a statement from this administration or what, Palmer?
I think yeah, at the very least, it's they are very committed to doing their best to keep him. Not saying they will keep him, but it's okay. We're gonna do what we can to keep him. And
Absolutely.
that's all you can ask for. That's eventually the number could get too high, but you'd feel better if he left like, oh, he got paid 6 million. Yeah, okay. Rather than like, oh, he got paid 2.5, where it's like you could have matched that. But yeah, they've done what they can, which I'm pretty happy with.
Yeah, to my understanding, that was basically a match of a reported contract offer that Florida State may have offered him. If you remember, Tony Skinn's name was also kind of thrown around those conversations as well down in Tallahassee. They ended up hiring Luke Laux, an assistant from the Sacramento Kings, came over. Apparently, that contract is not much higher than what, or basically the same level as what Tony Skinn is now being paid at George Mason, which, like I said, it feels like a statement from this program and this organization that that is the deal that gets done. But we do have one change in the coaching staff to maybe talk about, Palmer, maybe that fans don't realize. Serge Clement out, Andy Fox in. This was maybe a little bit of an under the radar change, but it's one. Clement spends only 1 year on the Patriots bench, but now it does. If you know Andy Fox's background, I think I'm going to let you explain it here a little bit, Palmer. Andy Fox, this kind of seems like a guy that Tony Skinn has wanted on his staff the entire time.
Pretty sure he was one of the like when he was making his first staff, Fox was one of the people he called, and Fox was at Vanderbilt. He then went to Army, and now he's at Mason. But he specialized in the like Southern Virginia, kind of rural Virginia. I'll call it basically non-Northern Virginia area,
Mhm.
uh, which is, I mean, you kind of like that. It's like there's some good players out there.
Yeah.
There's Oak Hill. There's a lot of stuff in Charlottesville, stuff like that. Like, so you're happy with that. Seems like he's kind of worn a lot of hats during this time. I feel like when I was looking at his history of jobs, it would always be some basketball job, like some like coaching job slash director of something,
Mhm.
where he's like, oh, he's also the radio coordinator. He's also the director of basketball operations. So it seems like he can do a lot, which is really important.
Yeah, Fox certainly, I agree with that a lot. Palmer, Fox certainly a long history of strong assistant coaching jobs. For those who don't know, Fox was actually an assistant coach along with Tony Skinn when both were at Louisiana Tech together. When Conkle was where Conkle was the head coach at Louisiana Tech, both were assistant coaches there. I think Fox, the big thing I think that he's known for is probably that 4 or 5 year stretch that he was at Vanderbilt. with Jerry Stackhouse. Obviously, with the change in Vanderbilt for last season, he took the last year at Army, but is now with George Mason. Certainly, I think Tony Skin's got a guy. Steve Curran and Lewis Hinton both stay for their third years as well. It's another year where Steve Curran stays. A little bit less, I will say, in terms of lower tier Northeast schools being open this offseason, which probably lessened Curran's name base, it felt like this year. Though I think certainly we could hear his name pop up again if a couple of jobs that I do expect to be open this upcoming offseason open up, but that is for the future. Today we're talking about the now, but otherwise the coaching staff is set. Only one change, Clement out, Fox in, but it is going to be a big year because there's a lot of change, Palmer. A lot of change from the 26 and 17 we just saw. A lot of seniors graduating. There are a couple of transfers out, but a lot of this was the loss of seniors graduating. You're not just talking about guys who stayed over from the first year of Skin and Darius Maddox and Woody Newton, but you're also talking about guys like Zach Anderson and KD Johnson, guys who are already seniors, Jared Billups as well, part of that group, guys who did not leave in the portal. These are guys who graduated, and those are guys who had to be replaced. A lot of new names coming in, but first let's talk about the guys who decided to leave. I'm going to kick us off here, Palmer. The big one, of course, Jalen Haynes, Big Slime, did indeed end up transferring to a Power 5 conference. He will spend his fourth season of college basketball at Cincinnati in the Big 12. Wes Miller, who is very much on the hot seat, by the way, at Cincinnati. There's a lot of talk that if they do not make the tournament this year, he will lose his job. So there's a lot of pressure that Haynes coming in to help improve that front court offensively, which has been a big struggle for that Cincinnati team for a while now. Haynes is kind of their main piece offensively there. But obviously, Palmer, a huge loss for the Patriots and Haynes leaving for Cincinnati.
Yeah, if he had returned, I can almost guarantee he would have been the preseason conference player of the year.
Mhm.
Uh, that's just kind of the state college basketball is in. You can have this player who's awesome, and if another school wants him and they're a Power Five, oh well.
Yeah, it just is what it is. It's a sad state of affairs, I think, in college basketball, but it is certainly kind of does feel like what it is at this point. That is, such is life, right? C'est la vie. Such is life. But Haynes is out. We also had a couple of the backup big man as well. This one was maybe a little bit more expected. Giovanni Emagiru is leaving for East Carolina. Mason has played East Carolina the last 2 years. They do not this year. There is no game currently planned with East Carolina, but Emagiru leaves for what is a very rebuilt Pirates team. Similar situation, a lot of either seniors or transfers out in Greenville, and Emagiru part of basically what is a brand new front court there. He seems to be actually kind of the main piece in that front court, which is kind of, I think, the expectation why he'd want to transfer. I don't think he would have started here with the pieces that Mason, I think, was looking to bring in. So Emagiru out to George Mason. It was a hot start for him here at Mason Palmer, but it seemed like the frustration from not only the fans, but I believe the coaching staff, it seemed by the end of the season, seemed to be growing.
Yeah, he started off great early, and it's really funny that there's such a good parallel to Ojiako and Aduro.
Mhm.
That one year where it was like, oh man, Ojiako's kind of outplaying him, and then at some point for that year's conference play, but it's like, oh, never mind.
It was
Uh,
actually even earlier, really,
it
this year,
was
because
it's like
Haynes kind of turned it on. You remember the pre-Thanksgiving game against James Madison? It
yes,
seemed to really just finally all click for Jalen Haynes, and it seemed to really be a struggle for Emagiru, not just to get game time, but then also to make an effect in his limited minutes. There were points. I mean, we got to remember Palmer against LaSalle and other points later in the season at LaSalle, kind of the big one where Stas Sivka, the then freshman from Slovenia, who we all love, but maybe was not a guy who expected to get big minutes. He was used for, was the main backup to Haynes in a couple of games at the end of the season. And it seemed to be, yeah, it would seem to be both kind of a level of play, and sometimes it all seemed like an effort thing. I think with Emagiru, defensively, it felt like sometimes seemed to like to get beat off of pick and rolls. But still, it's a whole new front court for Mason because we just lost our two guys last year. But then also you had some youth transfer out. Both Justin Begg and Bryson Coakley leave the team, Palmer, again, this is just kind of a part of the new era of college basketball where freshmen don't think they're getting playing time. They're going to head out to another location.
For Coakley, I think it is. For Begg, I think Begg 5 years ago, like early portal, I think Begg still leaves
Mhm,
because he went to Sam Houston State, and that's in Houston. He's from Houston.
mhm,
I think that was happening no matter what.
mm.
You know what I mean? I don't. I think Skink could have said, "Hey, you're the starting point guard." And he's like, "Yeah, I want to go home." So I that doesn't hurt too much, just because it was like, okay, it wasn't really a Mason thing. It was more of a okay, they just didn't fit. Uh, and Coakley's just like, yeah, it would have been kind of hard for him to get playing time.
Yeah, I think a lot of people would have felt like that. And we're gonna kind of, we could transfer into the freshmen, I think here, if we can move into them. Uh, I think a lot of people might have had incoming freshman Devin Booker, in over Coakley in terms of playing time. I think there's a lot of people who are high on Devin Booker, the three-star out of there. There's also in the front court. Four-star Emmanuel Kanga, one of the highest rated recruits in the history of the program. There's a lot of excitement around Kanga Palmer. Tell the fans why they should be excited. There's just a lot of excitement around him in terms of a freshman. We maybe I mean it's been recent, but not maybe not since Justin Fernandez.
I think the biggest hype is, for me personally, is he's super ready to play because his with the biggest strength I saw was his pick and roll defense,
Hmm.
and that's kind of what keeps big men off the court. So it's kind of like, well, if the main kind of young guy weakness is this, and that's his strength, and it's like he might just kind of be ready to play.
Yeah, and I want to point this out because I don't think many Mason fans caught it, but in one of the summer practice videos, you did see where it looked like there was a lineup being run out there where Nick Ellington, who we'll get to shortly, is one of the new transfers coming in, and Emmanuel Kanga were both on the floor at the same time, which Ellington, even though he's about the same height as Kanga, really is just really is a pure center. If you look at his stats, and we'll get into that, but it would suggest, Mason doesn't really necessarily have a pure four to back up. Again, another transfer in Dole Adebayo, who we're going to get to here shortly. But it does suggest that Tony Skinn is thinking about not only playing Kanga at the five, but it does suggest that he might see some playing time at the four this year as well.
Yes, I could see that happening. Uh, I think it'd be more of a I feel like he could play the four. I feel like he's more of a big than a true four, but he's he's mobile enough that you could see it happening, and it wouldn't you wouldn't have to be like super specialized lineups. It could just be kind of a for 5 minutes in this game, he'll just play the floor.
Yeah. And you could see that. I think we could see that, especially against Mason. Again, we don't know what the non-con schedule fully looks like yet. But this is the group that could, I think, maybe against some smaller teams that we could see a non-conference. I think it's very plausible that we could see Mason throw out some two big lineups featuring Kanga maybe at the four. But let's start getting into these transfers. We'll start with a man I just mentioned, Palmer, Dola Adebayo, one of the stars of the Mount St. Mary's team who kind of stunned the MAC. That's the MAAC, not the UMass MAC, but the MAAC. You see, isn't that a mouthful, Palmer? That's a mouthful in itself. But Dola Adebayo from Mount St. Mary's, the Mounts, one of the best players on that team the last 2 years. Mason seems to have gotten a good one here. One of the most highly regarded transfers to come to Mason this season.
Yeah, he seems like a big high floor guy, and the ceiling isn't low.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like he's going to be a at least starting caliber four who's going to play defense and be athletic. I think my comp for him was like the idea of Malik Henry,
Hmm.
whereas like yeah, he's a four, but he's a big man, but he also kind of does everything, and he's super athletic. It's like yeah, that's kind of what you wanted with Malik Henry, who we loved, but you know.
Damn you, Dave Paulson. Anyways, but yeah, there is that to go about. And I do want to forget, I just realized I did forget two other incoming freshmen. We've got the international player, another international player in wing Ryan Preston Mendy, as well, Isaiah Skin, the son of Tony Skin, the point guard, is here as well. Palmer, do you think those kind of seem to be the bottom two guys of the depth chart, but is there any room potentially for either of these guys to make an impact this season?
I think Skin, I think I would say generally no, just because they're so far down on the depth chart. There's so many older guys here. I think the only way Skin could get on the floor is maybe for like free throw shooting moments,
Mhm.
but I wouldn't really see anything other than that. I could see both of them redshirting. Uh, Mendy seems like a very much a project. I could see him being good, but he's a project.
He's a project. He could be very good. You're right. There's signs. There's signs
Yeah.
there in the video that we watched of him in his home country of France, but it's certainly a project European player that Tony Skin is taking a swing on there and what we've got. But we'll continue on here, though. Sorry about forgetting those two freshmen as well. Apologies to them. But we'll keep going on the transfers here. Dola Adebayo was quickly joined by what might be the most exciting man to come to Mason in the last couple of years. Let's talk about Jamari Fat Hill. We'll call he wants to be called Fat Hill, it seems like. So let's talk about Fat Fatt Hill, the man from Ball State. Talk about this 6'5" wing palmer.
This is a super swing for the fences type of guy. He was he was a he's a high flying dunker, really efficient at the rim, really inefficient everywhere else. So it's just what happened. You just don't know what's going to happen there. And I think that on a better team, we watched Ball State. Uh, Ball State had a center who would just chill right under the rim, and it was just like, man, that's not helping it very much.
He's kind of,
But
if anything, he made it worse because he kind of blocked it
yeah,
to get anyone
yeah,
else to get to the point. We both kind of I remember we both kind of laughed about this because when we were looking at his Ken Palm for this, we were like, the Ken Palm rates this Sparks guy pretty highly. And then we both watched the games and we were like, oh, that's a whole load of crap. This
yeah.
guy stinks.
It's the guy who takes two shots and makes them both because they're both dunks, and it's like,
Yeah,
oh, but he never misses. It's like, oh, well, doesn't really do anything,
yeah. But
but it's
I
it's yeah,
Fat Hill though could be he has the potential to be a guy. Absolutely. He's got the potential to be a guy. But there's
for
also
sure.
absolutely the fear that he could shoot us out of the games was terrible from beyond the arc last year. I think it was something like 27% for Ball State last year. Not a particularly good guy for mid range, like you said, either. I think the idea Tony Skinn is not a coach who's going to let him take those shots. Certainly, I think the plan is to kind of develop Hill into this from the three spot from the small four position into this true slasher driver type of player. I think that's the hope here with Hill. But man, the potential fun level, as I think you described it in those recruiting articles of yours, Palmer, which you can go read on giantkiller.com. All very, very good from Palmer, who is one of the best, in my opinion, in the A10 coverage sphere in terms of analyzing players. Just the fun level for Hill was the highest of all the newcomers this year. And if you watch any videos of him, you can see why, because the athleticism is just so clearly there. It really is a P5 level in terms of athleticism.
He was actually a one and done candidate during his before senior year of high school. He ended up going the JUCO route before going to Ball State, but there was some NBA buzz on him a couple years ago, which is like you can kind of see why. It's like that guy's pretty athletic.
Yeah.
I wouldn't doubt, if he has an okay season with Mason, he gets like a summer league invite or something.
Yeah, Hill is the interesting one again. We have no idea what those JUCO years will do to his eligibility. Does he have, is this his last year or does he have more years left after him? Who knows? We have no idea. But he's going to be a super fun player, I think, to watch here. Moving on, I think the player that I'm most excited about those is next player, Palmer. I've said it before on social media, and I'll say it again. I think this guy has genuine first team potential coming from Presbyterian. My new favorite player, Corey Mincy. Tony Skinn finally got his man at the point. It feels like Palmer. It feels like Corey Mincy is the point guard that Tony Skinn has been clamoring for since he got here.
Yeah, it's a big signing. My hand comp for him was normal size Jameer Brickus, and Jameer Brickus was an all conference player, so that's pretty good praise. I think the big thing is I didn't see any weaknesses. Like for players who have more time to pass, it's like, oh yeah, there was the, he was small. Like quickly, like, oh, he was really small. It's like this guy's a full 6'1", 6'2", shoots three, shoots from two. It's like kind of does everything, and he's a good defender. It's like there's kind of not really much. Like seems like the floor is an average A10 starter, which is really good.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt in my opinion that Corey Mincy is he is the best point guard who I think we're going to see. I think not just in the Kim English, not just in the Tony Skinn era, excuse me, but also I think from the 2 seasons of Kim English ball that I think kind of have played here in these last half decade of, let's call it, a much higher floor of George Mason basketball. I think there is, but I think certainly over the past 5 seasons, Corey Mincy I think is going to be the best point guard to step on the floor for this for the George Mason Patriots. I think, like you said, he's got a 3 level scoring ability. He's a strong passer of the ball. He's got solid defense. Not great. We're not talking like Jared Billups level or even really KD Johnson level of defense here, but we're talking decent defense. We're not talking about a guy who gets blown past every time. He has the size to compete at the A10 level. He's just, I think, of all the people with the ceilings, and I think the idea of what Fat Hill could be, I think, is the highest ceiling if we can turn him into that. But I think Mincy has the clearest path to reach that high ceiling. Like I said, this is a guy who I genuinely think could be a first team all to A10 player this year, and is, I think, genuinely somebody who could be competing to be the A10 player of the year. There is really no returners this year in the Atlantic 10 who I think could compete for that job. I think everyone thought it was going to be X Brown. X Brown left for Oklahoma. So it's a wide open race there right now. I think Corey Mincy could very quickly become one of those guys that we talk about being the A10 player of the year.
I think it's very possible because I think it's Rafael Castro, and that's kind of it
Yeah.
right now. As everybody else is like, well, maybe if this guy does this, maybe this guy does. It's Castro is kind of the only guy who is like, yeah, probably.
Yeah, he's going to be in there, Rafael Castro. He'll be in there just because of the role he'll play with GW this year. And certainly we'll see if the scoring numbers are that high, though, maybe as they were last year. There seems to be a belief that hopefully they can move the ball around a little bit more this year in terms of scoring options at our enemies across the Potomac. But otherwise, we'll move on here. Transfer number 4, the first of the big men, Nick Ellington. This is an interesting one, Palmer. A slightly undersized big man. He's been listed at 6'7" and 6'8" numerous places. That 6'7", of course, has some people worried because the difference between a 6'7" and a 6'8" center could be a big deal. But there's a lot to like about Ellington, especially if you look at his analytics and kind of his behind the scenes play. Talk about why you think Tony Skinn made the choice to be Nick Ellington here to what seems to be on track to be the starting center for George Mason as the season starts.
I think a big thing was he's really old. I think he's a 6 year senior.
Yeah, 6 year.
Uh, and it's hard, really hard to get. I think somebody pointed out like there's not a lot of big men around here anymore in the A10, and the
Mhm.
big men are leaving. They're getting called up. A lot of Power Fives are calling up A10 backups to be their third sitter. It was just like, whoa, but uh, so I think there was they had to
Shaheed
like,
Muhammad to
well, yeah,
Florida State comes to mind there,
yeah,
Palmer. Like,
yeah, and then Fumina to Mississippi State last year, we're just like, oh,
yeah.
okay. Uh, but I think 6'7" scared away a lot of any Power Five schools were like, you could have him. So Mason got lucky with that. That no Power Five was going to go after that. Uh, I think a big thing is he's a really good screen setter, and
Mhm.
Mason's offense is very ball screen dependent. So it might be like, okay, but this guy's really good at what we do. It's a very good fit, and he's just pretty good.
And then also, I will say, it seems like that Tony Skinn is trying to get closer to that season one offense, where while Amari Kelly was certainly a big part of that offense, and I think we'll end up, I don't think Nick Ellington will be that big as Amari Kelly was in that role. Kelly was not option number one in that offense. It was Keyshawn Hall, then Darius Maddox, and even certainly to an extent, sometimes Baraka Koji when he was really on, especially when he was driving to the basket. It would go Hall, Maddox, Okogie before it would get to Amari Kelly in a couple of games for Mason that season in the 23-24 season. But we don't, it seems like the way this team is set up, Palmer, we don't really need Nick Ellington to necessarily be, a 12, 13 point guy. Mason would probably be okay with him being a 9, 10 point a game guy, maybe a little bit under that. But this is a guy who is very efficient around the basket. He's got long arms. He's got, again, for a guy who seems undersized, the videos I think that we watched, he likes contact. He's a solid rebounder. He's not a guy who's going to necessarily get flattened, I think, most nights. I think you worry about him maybe against the Castros and the Latongs of the world, Miles Rubin. Do you worry about him against those guys? Maybe a little bit, but there's not a lot of other bigs, though, that you look at in the A10 and you say, man, I don't think Nick Ellington can at least compete physically with those guys.
I definitely agree with that. I think his he's 6'7", but he's a big 6'7". He also
Mhm.
has really long arms. So kind of like the effective height might be like actually it's more like a 6'9" guy. So it's I feel like this the 6'7" thing is just kind of a little overblown and
Mhm.
it probably won't be a problem. Now of course they he is not the only center on the roster. So if it is a problem,
We got
they
another one.
they've got plans.
They have
Yeah.
plans. We're not going to get to that center yet because technically transfer number 5, a guy who Mason we've been talking about for the last couple of years, of potential transfer to the Georgia Mason, former Maryland guard Jahari Long, now is a Mason Patriot. This was a guy who before an ACL tear took him out all last season. There was some chatter could he be coming to Mason even last year. None of that materialized, but now he's here. The Mason, this talk about Jahari Long Palmer. Why is he going to be so crucial? I think to our backcourt depth.
Uh there's a archetype player that is very successful. It's the rotation player at the Power Five. He drops down to the mid-major.
Mm-hmm.
He was a rotation player at Maryland, and he's kind of playing the same role in Mason. So it's kind of like, how could this not work?
Yeah, it does feel that. Also, I want to point this out. Long has a history of not really being that bad of a 3 point shooter. You look at his last season at Maryland, I believe he shot nearly 36% from three. So could be a key piece off the bench in that regard, potentially as a 3 point shooter. But let's talk about the other big man here. We're talking about transfer number 6, Riley Allenspach from Samford. Some of you guys may remember, some of you fans may remember he did play in that NIT game at Eagle Bank Arena when Mason played Samford in the postseason, which actually ended up being the last game that Bucky McMillan would ever coach at Samford. He and his Buckyball are now at Texas A&M, which freed up Allenspach to leave, and now he is a George Mason Patriot, which is funny how these things work sometimes, right, Palmer? But Allenspach certainly is a different big man, certainly different to any of the big men we had on the team last year. Talk about Allenspach and why he could be such a crucial part of this team this year.
The big one is he's 6'11", so that's already just a really good starting point.
Mhm.
And he was just a really good scorer. I'm not sure the numbers will stand up, but it was like he had crazy score per
Yeah,
30. His per 36 numbers are crazy.
yeah.
His per 36 per 48 numbers are crazy. Uh, he's also really really efficient. Shot absurdly great from three. Now on okay-ish volume, not tiny, but not a lot. Uh, it was just overall efficiency. Uh, it just kind of seemed like he was pretty good at everything, and it's uh one of those things when you wonder how is this guy the backup at Samford? Because
Mhm.
Samford was playing a character in the Mason universe, Larry Olenka, who averaged over 10 fouls per game or
Yeah.
at 10 fouls per 40, which is absurd. And he was getting playing time over him sometimes. It was like, I wonder what's going on there. But I really the increase in both competition level and play time. There's always make it really interesting. It's like they saw something in this.
Yeah, I think to move on to what you talked about there about the play time. But that kind of was how Bucky Ball was. There was a lot of rotation. I think I saw there was a game where they went to OT against somebody and no player played over like 25 minutes. Like they played the full 40 and then they played like an extra 5 minutes and they no one played over 25 minutes, which is wild. And really, even in today's college basketball, um, he's going to be such an interesting player. I think he has that pick and pop trail back ability that really has not existed for George Mason in the last year. Certainly, Amari Kelly could do that to an extent. Really, neither Jalen Haynes or Gio Emajiro could do that confidently or efficiently last year at all. But yeah, that's what Allen Spot could add to this team. But we're also going to go on now to transfer number 7. Another interesting one. Masai Troutman out of Northeastern only played 13 games last year, but Palmer, there's a track record before then that shows there could be a lot to like about this kid from Frederick, Maryland.
To start off with, he's a really good shooter.
Yes.
He's really athletic. Honestly, he kind of looks like what a year two or a year three Justin Fernandez could have looked like based on what
Mhm.
we saw. Just kind of a slasher, 3-point shooter. Like this guy could be really good. Uh, I think he has a really good. I think his floor is kind of a six. I think his floor is kind of like a sixth, seventh man scoring piece off the bench.
Mhm.
Uh, I got a bad. When I did my scouting. He was covering. He was covering the other team's number one,
Mm.
which is like, oh, he's a point of attack defender, and he got absolutely cooked all game. It's like, well, that stinks. He got cooked all game, but well, I'm still happy that he got put on him. He's still
Yeah.
giving the point. He's still a point of attack defender, so it's like maybe it's just a bad game.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. Troutman, like you said, Palmer, deadly shooter, could be the main attack point from the three arc this year for Mason. Certainly, maybe the closest thing we've got to a Darius Maddox replacement, certainly in terms of potential production from the 3-point line. And then finally, ending on transfer number 8, Palmer. Let's talk about Malik Presley, the question mark, as I'll call him to an extent. But Presley, the interesting 6'6" wing coming from Texas, redshirted at Texas last year, did not play a single minute of time at Texas last year, but spent the 23-24 season at the last season where Andy Fox was an assistant at Vanderbilt, which kind of then connects the dots of how we got Presley to come here.
Yeah, this is a guy that is it's very complicated. He's a wing who can't really shoot, and the numbers, the indicators of shooting improvement aren't really there. They're
No.
kind of the opposite. Whereas like, oh, this guy's probably not going to get better at shooting. I think that if you just don't imagine him getting better at shooting, you feel a lot better because like he's still a really good defender, a really good slasher. I think this is kind of Saquon Singleton, whereas like you're kind of okay. He's going to do what he does, and that's it, and you're okay with that. Uh, I think this it's a very good. You're very happy that he's like the 10th man,
Mhm.
10th or 11th man, and not like your seventh man.
Yeah.
And basically, if this doesn't work out, then it doesn't really matter too much because they don't really need him. But if it works out, that's just another rotation player.
Another rotation player to have. Depth is key, especially in the Patriot pressure. But that's how the roster settles out, Palmer. Let's, with the time we've got left, though, we've got about 6 minutes left here, Palmer. Let's talk about both expectations. And Palmer, let's start talking about where we see the A10 this year. Let's make some A10 standings predictions for the season. I'm going to start with you. Let's start off with your pillow fight teams, and then we'll kind of trade back and forth from there.
Pillow fight. Uh, I feel bad, but just based off, I think the three of league guys kept pointing it out. Uh, Fordham had like 7 players in May, something crazy like that. So I'm just gonna kind of put them there and there. Like, yeah, if they had 7 players in May, they probably didn't get too many great players after that. Uh, Rhode Island probably just because that's Archie, and that's just kind of what happens. Uh, it's gets harder every offseason to predict the next season because there's more and more,
Change.
there's more and more turnover. Uh, yeah, it's I keep forgetting there's only is it four? Are there four
There's only 4
Fight
spots
teams
now
now?
again because since UMass has left officially, we're back down to 4. Since we're back to
Okay.
14 teams.
So we got Fordham, Rhodey. Let's just throw Richmond. Okay, now I'm looking at it. I might just be putting out the Philadelphia from last year, but uh Fordham, Richmond, Rhodey, LaSalle. Let's go with that.
Okay. All right. For me, I think I agree with you on 3 of those 4. I think LaSalle, Rhody, and Fordham, I think to an extent pretty clearly have the weakest rosters in the A10 or at the very least. I think in terms of roster wise, we have Fordham and LaSalle, and then I think coaching questions abound. You have Rhode Island. I'm gonna put Davidson instead of Richmond there as my fourth pillow fight team. I just don't see it. I just don't see it. Palmer, let's talk about between the top four then, and between the top four in the pillow fight. Who are kind of your mid-table teams?
Uh, I think St. Joe's is so easily a middle of the pack team that is going to do just enough to keep filming around for one more year. And I bet you'll do that next year too. Uh, I think I think Duquesne is just going to be a very Duquesne is so easily in the 8-9 game. Yeah, it's I feel like there's less. I feel like Mason is at the top of the middle of the pack teams. Uh, I feel like there's last year there were somehow like 13 middle of the pack teams last year. Uh, I don't think it'll be like that this year, but I feel like we're looking honestly. I feel like it looks kind of similar to how it did the preseason last year, where there's kind of a set top 4 or 5, and then after that we don't know.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah,
Yeah, for me, I think there's a couple, like you said, I think St. Joe's, Duquesne, I think St. Bonaventure, I think is going to be, it's hard to see them competing for the top four. I don't think they'll be there. There is kind of, it does kind of feel like there is kind of this set top five, six, Mason probably included on the lower half of that. It does seem to be setting up, and I'll take the top four here to start. It does kind of seem like it's setting up to be SLU, VCU, Loyola Chicago seems to be in there. It kind of feels like that's where we're going with this right now. But for me, I think Richmond, and then St. Bonaventure, then you're talking about Duquesne, I think, is probably in that middle tier. And then you start talking about 7, 6, and 5, and that's when it starts to get really hard, I think. That's when I think it starts to get harder, at least this season. I think, especially when you're looking at the teams here that we have left. Again, we start talking about Mason, we start talking about St. Joe's. You're talking about teams who do have good players. You're talking about teams who have, maybe not in St. Joe's case, but in other teams' case, good coaches. It's going to be hard to talk about right now here, though. I do think in the end, I think Dayton feels like a team that narrowly misses out in the top four for me. So I think my top four in the end is going to be VCU, St. Louis, Loyola Chicago, and I hate to say it, I think it is going to be George. It has to be George Washington's year, right? Like they've spent the money, they have the players. If they don't make the top four, I think this is if we want to get into further A10 conversation here, Palmer, is Chris Caputo's job in danger?
I mean he might. I mean that is Miami head coach candidate Chris Caputo, but uh, yeah, because I feel like it's the next year has always been the year for GW, and this year feels like it is the year, but I feel like we were saying that last year. So, there's like David said, where it feels like hey, maybe this is the year. Probably isn't, but it could be the year. I don't think they win. I don't really see a universe where they win just because the number one player is Castro, who's a really good player, just don't think he'd be your number one. Uh, yeah, I think they make the top four, but it's not like I don't think they're competing for number one.
Yeah, I think that's very, very fair here. Palmer, we're going to stop right there for today. That will be off-season video one. Thank you, folks, for listening to the Onward to Victory podcast. I'm Joe Szymanski. He's Palmer Johnson. We'll be back very soon with a second postseason podcast, which will hopefully be the non-conference review. Thank you all for listening to Onward to Victory. We'll see you next time.